There is a river where goodness flows. There is a fountain that drowns sorrows. There is an ocean deeper than fear. The tide is rising, rising. There is a current stirring deep inside. It's overflowing from the heart of God. The flood of heaven rushing over us. The tide is rising, rising. Bursting, bursting up from the ground. We feel it now. Bursting, bursting up from the ground. We feel it now. We come alive in the river. 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 Come on, everybody say, there is a current stirring deep inside. It's overflowing from the heart of God. The flood of heaven rushing over us. The tide is rising, rising. Bursting, bursting up from the ground. We feel it now. Bursting, bursting up from the ground. We feel it now. We come alive in the river. 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 Hey! We come alive in the river. We come alive. We come alive in the river. Break open prison doors. Set all the captives free. Spring up a well. Spring up a well. Spring up a well in me. Nothing can stop this joy. We're dancing in the streets. Spring up a well. Spring up a well. Spring up a well in me. We come alive in the river. We come alive in the river. Everybody say, we come alive in the river. 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 Spring up a well. Spring up a well. Spring up a well. Spring up a well. Spring up a well in me. Yes, we come alive in the river. We come alive. We come alive in the river. 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 There is a sound I love to hear. It's the sound of the Savior's robe as he walks into the room where people pray. When we hear praises, he hears faith. There is a sound I love to hear. It's the sound of the Savior's robe as he walks into the room where people pray. When we hear worship, he gives faith. Yes, we worship you. Sing his praise aloud. Sing his praise aloud. Oh, awake my soul and sing. Sing his praise aloud. Sing his praise aloud. Sound that changes things, the sound of his people on their knees. Oh, wake up, you slumbering, it's time to worship him. Come on, awake my soul and sing, sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud. Oh, with everything we sing. Praise aloud, sing his praise aloud. And when he moves, and when we pray, we're stood a wall, now stands a way, where every promise is amen, amen, amen. And when he moves, make no mistake, the boughs of hell begin to shake. All hail the Lord, all hail the King. Hey, oh, let the King of glory enter in. Hey, oh, fall down on your knees and worship him. Hey, oh, let his praise rise up, don't hold it in. Oh, we sing your praise is oh God. Awake my soul and sing, sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud. Come on, lift your voices and sing this. Oh, awake my soul and sing, sing his praise aloud, sing his praise aloud.
He's like a river, wash over me. Immerse me in water as deep as the sea. Hide me in love, healing embrace. He's like a river, wash over me. As I worship your majesty, I worship your holy name. Jesus, my everything, all that I am is yours. Come, Holy Spirit, rain down on me. your majesty. I worship your holy name. Jesus, my everything. All that I am is yours. I worship your majesty. I worship your holy name. Jesus, my everything. All that I am is Open the heavens, fling wide the gates, flood every heart with mercy. Pour out your presence, inhabit our praise as we cry, holy, holy. Open the heavens, fling wide the gates, flood every heart with mercy. Pour out your presence, inhabit our praise as we cry, holy, holy. Open the heavens, fling wide the gates, flood every heart with mercy. Pour out your presence, inhabit our praise as we cry, holy, holy. As we cry, holy, holy. Lord, send revival. Lord, send it now. A move of your spirit, heaven break out. Come now in power, cover this land like you've done it before. Would you do it again? Lord, send revival. Lord, send it now. A move of your spirit, heaven break out. Come now in power, cover this land like you've done it before. Would you do it again? Lord, send revival. Lord, send it now. A move of your spirit, heaven break out. Come now in power, cover this land like you've done it before. Would you do it again? Lord, send revival. Lord, send it now. A move of your spirit, heaven break out. Come now in power, cover this land like you've done it before. Would you do it again? Heaven break out. Heaven break out. Heaven break out. Heaven break out. Lord, send revival. Come on, sing it out. Lord, send revival. Lord, send it now. The move of your spirit, heaven break out. Come now in power, cover this land like you've done it before. Would you do it again? Lord, send revival. Lord, send it now. A move of your spirit, heaven break out. Come now in power, cover this land like you've done it before. Would you do it again?
If this is your first time at Bonita Valley, we invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the service. If you want some info on BVCC, simply complete our online Connect card. Here's how it works. Scan the QR code you'll find at the Info Center, Guest Central, or various other locations around campus with the camera on your smartphone. Open the link that will take you to Connect Card. You'll find a number of connecting options, including first-time guests, prayer requests, I want some info on a Bonita Valley ministry. Check the appropriate connection box you're after. Push submit, and we'll get back to you ASAP. And if you are a first-time guest today, please stop by Guest Central at the end of this service and pick up a special gift bag we have just for you. We'd like to take a few minutes to tell you about some things coming up for you and your family at Bonita Valley. Every Easter, hundreds of new and unchurched families visit our campus to hear the life-changing message of Jesus. And that's why Easter weekend is such a huge opportunity, both to invite someone and to serve. You can make a difference on Good Friday or Easter Sunday by serving on one of our amazing ministry teams. For more information on our teams or to sign up, simply stop by bonitavalley.com and click on Serve on Easter Weekend under the Events tab.
Every Wednesday night, BVCC provides life-building ministry opportunities for the whole family. For boys and girls, we have Bonita Rangers and Bonita Girls Club. For students in middle and high school, we have Bonita Valley Youth. And for adults, we have a prayer and worship service. All of these Wednesday night ministries happen every week at 7 p.m. All church members are invited to attend this year's annual business meeting, which happens this Wednesday, March 30th at 7:45 p.m. after our Wednesday night worship service.
God didn't design ministry for just a few with seminary degrees. At BVCC, we believe that every member of our church is a minister. This is what Class 301 is all about. During this class, Pastor Mike will guide you through discovering your shape for ministry and how God can use your spiritual gifts, your heart, your abilities, personality, and experiences to minister to others in need. Discover the significant life God has for you in our next 301 seminar happening on Sunday, April 3rd from 5 to 7:30 p.m. in the Family Center. Pastor Mike will help you discover your God-given shape and unique purpose God has for your life. Childcare and a casual meal will be provided.
We believe God has entrusted us to be managers of our time, talent, and treasures. We believe He wants us to use temporary resources to make a real and eternal difference in our world. And that's what giving at BVCC is all about. When we give to God, we see lives changed and transformed, both others and ours.
There are 3 ways to give at BVCC. Online at bonitavalley.com/giving, by texting Bonita Valley to 833-303-9325, or by mailing your offering to BVCC 4744 Bonita Road, Bonita, California 91902.
During our Sunday services, we offer a professionally staffed nursery that will lovingly care for your little one up to 2 years of age. We also offer an outdoor patio area and a family room with TV monitors for parents who choose to keep children under 2 years of age with them. Pastor Davida and her team lead incredibly fun ministries for preschool and elementary-aged children in the Life Center gym. During today's service, you can take notes, sign up for events, and even give using your smartphone. Simply go to bonitavalley.com or your BVCC app and click on Follow the Service. Thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.
I want to set up where we're going this weekend in the message, just kind of like with a survey. When I do surveys or questions, a couple of things. It helps us all get on the same kind of mental track. It also helps me know who I'm talking to. So here's my question, kind of survey. If you are facing an impossible situation, maybe you have an overwhelming need or crisis in your life or in the life of somebody you love. Would you take just a moment, raise your hand. Let me just see if you have a crisis, an impossible situation, needs. Okay, now I have a word for you. In fact, this whole weekend is about you, and so you came to the right weekend. And if you didn't raise your hand, you can slip out. No, don't leave, because it's for you as well. But here's my word for those of you that raised your hand. You have some impossible crises, need, overwhelming situation that you or somebody you love is facing. I want to give you this encouraging word. You are positioned for a miracle. Now, I know it can feel so overwhelming, but you are positioned for a miracle, and here's why I say that. Study miracles in the Bible, and you'll discover that every single one of them begins for the same reason: an impossibility. See, that's why you need a miracle. You don't need a miracle if you can do it, or somebody else. And I know we kind of throw the word miracle around a lot because you got a miracle, because you got a spot, a parking place right in front of Krispy Kreme. That's not a miracle. No, I told God if there's a parking place, I'd eat a donut. No, I don't mean that kind of miracle. I mean a life or death, survive or you don't make it kind of situation. And when you and I have impossibilities in our life or in the lives of people we love, as discouraging and sometimes painful and heartbreaking as it can be, it literally positions us for the miraculous. That's the position a man found himself in John chapter 4. And we're going to look at his story and life and what it teaches us today. John 4 verse 46 says this: As Jesus traveled through Galilee, he came to Cana, where he had turned the water into wine. That's what we talked about last time. There was a government official in nearby Capernaum whose son was very sick. When he heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went and begged Jesus to come to Capernaum to heal his son, who was about to die. Jesus asked, "Will you never believe in me unless you see miraculous signs and wonders?" The official pleaded, "Lord, please come now before my little boy dies." Then Jesus told him, "Go back home. Your son will live." Or literally, your son lives. And the man believed what Jesus said and started home. While the man was on his way, some servants met him with the news that his son was alive and well. He asked them when the boy had begun to get better, and they replied, "Yesterday afternoon at 1 o'clock, his fever suddenly disappeared." Then the father realized that was the very time Jesus had told him, "Your son lives, your son will live." And he and his entire household believed in Jesus. And this was the what? Second miraculous what? Sign Jesus did in Galilee after coming from Judea. Now last week we started our series together, Reasons to Believe. We talked about this word signs that John uses in his gospel. And that signs in biblical times have the same purpose as in present times. Signs are directional. They point towards something. They inform us. They lead us. They teach us. They help us. They guide us. And that's what they did in biblical times, and that's what they do in these times. That's what they do for all of us. And John uses the word sign when he talks about miracles, because the miracles themselves were not the end of the story. The miracles were signs. And John says miracles are signs that point not to believing in miracles, but to believing in the one who works miracles. And the miracle worker. It's not about believing in miracles, it's about believing in Jesus who can do the miraculous. In fact, John says that's why I wrote my account of Jesus' story, my gospel, my good news account. Again, our kind of theme verses for this entire series is John 20, verses 30 and 31. Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these, I've chosen these, he says, that you may, what? Believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have what? Life. Believing is life-giving, life in his name. That word name means in his person, in his character, in who Jesus is. See, John says miracles weren't just signs for Jesus to show off. Miracles are signs for us to spiritually grow up. They're signs, they're opportunities for us to grow up. Now, we've talked about growth many times at Bonita Valley because growth is God's plan for all of us. It really is. God's plan is that you and I grow in every way. As Jesus, we want to grow physically, emotionally, relationally, and spiritually. Growth living things grow. When you stop growing, you start dying. How many are saying, I want to grow? Because growing is about living. But as we've talked about on multiple occasions, and I repeat these things because we learn by repetition, we only grow in two ways. There's only two ways to grow, and that's in struggles, because you only grow when you're stretched. You only grow when it's more difficult. You only grow by struggles, and we only grow in stages. There's no other way to grow. You're not born full grown, and you don't grow without struggles that stretch you, that develop you, that develop your endurance and perseverance and enable you to get bigger and better and stronger. And in this story in John chapter 4, and honestly, it's not one of the most talked about popular stories, miracles of Jesus. In fact, John's the only one who shares it. But it's significant. Why is it significant? Because John says, here's the second sign. Now, Jesus did many other miracles. He talks about that fact, and every miracle was a sign. But John, when he's writing his gospel, he's very selective, and he chooses different stories than some of the other gospel writers. And he says, I want to tell you a story that was the second sign that points toward Jesus, toward who he is, and believing in him and believing in his name that you might experience life. And it had to do with this dad, and it had to do with a crisis. And as we watch this dad, we discover something. We discover not only his struggles, we discover the stages of his believing. Because believing always happens in stages. I'm aware today some of you haven't started your faith journey yet. Others of you started it years ago. I don't know where you started it. The question is, are you proceeding? Are you growing in it? And I want to show you how we do that in this man's story. I want to show you 4 stages of believing that we learn from this man and that God is doing in our lives as well, which will explain a lot for us. And so here's the first one. If you're taking notes, I like to write things down. Here's the first one. Stage 1 of believing is desperation. I told you, you can't have a miracle without a crisis. And often it's the crises that launch our believing journey. And here's my question. Now, I can't take time to unpack every part of this story, and there's so many details in this story. But the Greek word used for this man as a ruler, it literally is tied to king. He wasn't a king, but he worked for the king. He worked for King Herod. King Herod was one of the most evil, wicked, murderous kings that there was. And he had a part of his leadership team, his cabinet, he had an outpost in Capernaum. And so this guy was one of his cabinet members. He was powerful, he was wealthy, he was rich, he was influential. And my question to you is, would this powerful, influential man have ever sought out Jesus, this carpenter, teacher, rabbi from Nazareth? This guy who was powerful with Rome and powerful with it, would he ever have looked for Jesus had he not had a crisis? My opinion is no. He would never have gone looking for Jesus had he not been desperate because his son was dying. He had tried everything he could. He was powerful, wealthy, had a lot of got the best doctor's money could buy. He tried every protocol that was out there. He tried anything and everything. In fact, I was reading, historians say that during this particular time in Israel, the Middle East, that 50% of children under 5 died before they got to the age of 5. That 50% of children 5 and under died before they even got to 5 years of age. It was a lot of death. Disease for which there were no medications and cures. And this dad he just could not give up on his son. So he had done everything he possibly could by his power, but he ran out of his power. Ever been there? Run out of options, run out of what you can do. And it was at that moment that he went looking for Jesus. Someone had told him at some point about Jesus, about the miracle that happened in Cana. See, Jesus, after this miracle, and it didn't stay quiet, that's one of the reasons why Jesus said to Mary, now's not my hour, because once I start the miracles, the clock is going to move toward the hour. The hour was his crucifixion. The countdown started. He leaves Cana, he goes down to Jerusalem, he goes down to the festival, the feast. He performs some miracles in Jerusalem. The other writers talk about this time. And then he works his way back up. He comes through Samaria. You know that story. He comes through Samaria and he meets with a woman by the well, and it was amazing in his encounter with her. And then he comes back up to Cana, and word has traveled that he's back. And word has also traveled what he did in Jerusalem. See, the people in Cana, it's like we know Jesus, we know his family, and Jesus, a prophet, has no honor in his own hometown, but yet when he comes back, they're all excited. And that's only because he had done some big stuff down in Jerusalem. Many had gone down there, and they go, our homeboy has made it. He's amazing. And so they're all cheering him back. Like, let's show here what you did there. They're all excited about the miracles that he did. And somehow that message got to this dad, this desperate dad. And someone says, you ought to try, because this Jesus miracle things are happening around him. And so the dad, that's the reason the dad decides he's going to go try to find Jesus. So he travels 17 miles from Capernaum to Cana. That's about what it is. Let me show you on a map, because sometimes you and I don't have we're not from those parts. Some of you have gone on tours with me in our churches. We've taken tours of the Holy Land, and we go to the Sea of Galilee. It's actually like a lake. You can see across it. But Capernaum is right on the Sea of Galilee. And you'll see where Capernaum is, and then you'll see, like to the left, or going west, you see Cana. Now, you can't tell on this map because it doesn't give like topography, but the Sea of Galilee and Capernaum is 700 feet below sea level. And so to get to Cana, it's all uphill. It's an all uphill walk. How many of you had parents who walked to school uphill both ways? It's kind of like that. But it's uphill. It's not, and I know that may seem like, okay, so what? Just hang with me for a minute. How many know that sometimes miracles require sweat equity? Sometimes if you're going to get what God has for you, you got to go uphill. In fact, I love the way one writer puts it. He offers this perspective. Your effort doesn't make miracles happen, but your lack of effort can keep them from happening. You cannot earn a miracle, but effort is a part of the equation. Many of us seek Jesus to the point of inconvenience, but no further. Miracles don't happen on your way out the door. They happen off the beaten path, sometimes 17 miles out of town. If you want to experience a miracle, sometimes you've got to go out of your way. This man was willing to go out of his way, uphill, and because he did, something happened that would not have happened had he not made the effort. You'll see this same principle again and again and again in miraculous stories in the Bible. There's a story in Mark chapter 2 of 4 friends who made the efforts, who offered the sweat equity to get their paralyzed friend to Jesus. And you know the story. It's a story of 4 friends who cared so much about their paralyzed friend. And they'd heard that Jesus heals, and so they put him on a stretcher, and that was a challenge to carry this man through the narrow streets. If you've been in the Middle East, the streets were narrow, and to get him there, and by the time they got there, the house was already full, and the people were in the house and around the house. At that moment, they could have said, well, hey, if this was God's will, this would have been easy. How many of you figured out God's will isn't always easy? It can be clear, but it's not easy. And so they said, let's think about this. And they couldn't get in, they couldn't get around, but hey, there's nobody on the roof. And there were stairs up the side of many of these homes, and they would use the roof for a variety of things, and even sometimes it's kind of a getaway place. And so they went up the stairs. Again, have you ever thought of the effort these 4 guys put in? Getting their friend, making a stretcher, carrying him upstairs. And then they get upstairs, and now they got to create a skylight in this house. So now they tear the roof, part of the roof, it was a dirt-packed roof, and there were beams, and so these guys, one of the guys had to be an engineer, because he figured out exactly where Jesus was, where the hole needed to be. Thank God, people that can measure. And they lowered it, and people were inside. Jesus is speaking, dust is falling on them, and the sun comes through. And then it's a shadow, and then a body, and then 4 faces looking in the hole. It happened. The effort that took these guys. I love there's a line in the story. I love this line. And I'm not going to preach on this story, but it's just a great. And it says, and when Jesus saw their faith, whose faith? The 4 guys on the roof. It wasn't the guy on the mat, the 4 guys on the roof. And when he saw their faith, he said to their friend, your sins are forgiven. And they're like, no, heal him. They didn't know about his sins. But Jesus had more than healing for their friend. He had wholeness. He always gives us more than we ask. Well, just mark that one down. You always get more than you ask with Jesus. He forgives his sins, and then he heals his body, and then 5 friends walked home. Why did it happen? Their effort didn't make the miracle happen, but the miracle would not have happened without their effort. There's a woman who had, for 12 years, this bleeding issue that made her unclean, ceremonially unclean, socially unclean. She could not go to the temple. She could not be with a family. She could not, if she was married, she was separated from her family. She was separated from her loved ones. 12 years of isolation and ridicule and shame. Again, a shame on her culture. And she tried everything. She'd gone to every doctor she could find. She spent every dollar she had, every shekel she had, and all kinds of treatments, and many of which, if you read about, they were horrible treatments. She tried everything, and she was desperate. And so she hears where Jesus is going to be, and she goes there, and she works her way through the crowd. You talk about sweat equity? You talk about leaving your house for a miracle? You talk about walking uphill? And she finally works her way through, and she forces her way through the crowd until she can get close enough to Jesus to touch him. She doesn't just touch him, she touches his garment. Not just his garment, she grabs the corner of his garment. Now, why is that? Because an Old Testament prophecy said to the Jewish people that when the Messiah comes, there will be healing in his wings, in the corner of his garments. In the Hebrew, it's kanaf. There's healing in the kanafs, the tassel on the corner. And she says, if this is the man I think he is, if this is the Messiah that I believe him to be, if I can just touch that corner, I will be healed. And she finally gets there and she touches it and she's healed. And then Jesus speaks to her in one of the most tender ways, calls her daughter. Nowhere else in Scripture does he call someone. This lady had been so alienated from her family, who knows how long since anyone had called her. Literally, the word means sweetheart. Why did she experience that amazing miracle? Because of effort? No, her effort didn't make it happen, but it would not have happened. So here's my question to you. If you need a miracle, where's your effort level? Now, I want to get real with you in this sermon. I want to get real with you in this sermon. See, there are people who say, I am messed up financially. I need help. We have an amazing seminar called Financial Peace University. Well, no, I don't want to go there. It costs money. Yeah. It's 9 weeks. Yeah, but you've been in trouble 30 years. So it's like it's worth. I'm desperate, but not that desperate. I've got an addiction. I've got a problem. I realize I got a habit, and I can't beat this on my own. We have a phenomenal support ministry called Celebrate Recovery, and people are being set free. But I can't go there. I mean, I'd be embarrassed, or it takes time. It's Tuesday. I got bowling on Tuesday night. How desperate are you? See, many times our journey to faith begins with desperation. There's an old line said, I heard it years ago. Until the pain of who we are is greater than the pain of change, we don't change. Until this pain is so bad I can't take it anymore, I don't pay the pain of going uphill, of getting out of my house, of getting out of my comfort zone, of walking the 17 miles. So my challenge to you is there desperation in your life? Is there crises in your life? And has it yet reached the place where you have given up on you and say, oh, I've got to reach God? Because that's where belief most often begins. Now, from this man, here's a second stage we see in him and us. Stage 2 of believing is determination. Determination. The dad makes a 17-mile climb. He gets to Jesus. He begs him. Now, in the Greek tense, this word begs means continues to beg. He doesn't just say once, Jesus, please come with me. He says, please, 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 please. You've got to come. How many of you have a child? Okay, you know what begging is. So it's begging. It's like, the child, he begs Jesus again and again. And Jesus has a conversation. Well, after that, would you come with me? Would you come with me? He continues to beg him. And Jesus responds, we already read it, let's look at it one more time, verse 48. Jesus responds by saying, will you never believe in me unless you see miraculous signs and wonders? I don't know about you, but that seems a little un-Jesus-like to me. Like, this man is desperate. His son is dying. And he comes to Jesus, please come heal my son. Jesus goes, you're not believing me unless you see signs and wonders. We're like, oh, Jesus. It's kind of the same thing. Listen carefully. Sometimes God doesn't play by our rules. Sometimes he doesn't act the way we think God should act. The same thing happened last week. If you were here, we talked. If you weren't, you got to watch it online. We talked about the wedding in Cana of Galilee, the miracle Jesus did, and they were out of wine, which seems like a catering crisis, but it was more than that. It was a social crisis. It was a shame crisis. You could be charged. You could be arrested for not having enough wine and food when you threw a wedding party. They were serious about parties. And whether Mary was part of the planning or whether it was a relative or we don't know, but she somehow was involved. And when she realized they were out of wine and this young couple was going to start their marriage with shame, the whole family was going to be in a shame culture for their entire generations, she goes to Jesus and says, Jesus, they're out of wine. Because she's always leaning on Jesus. He always knows what to do. She's expecting Jesus. And he responds to her, how? Woman, what's that to do with me? And we're like, oh, Jesus. That's not what I expected you to say. I expected you to say, yes, Mom. But he doesn't. Why? He wasn't being rude to her. We covered that. And the word woman wasn't derogatory, but he was saying, our relationship has changed. There's a difference now. When I was 12 and I was in the temple and you guys forgot me and came back to get me, and then I told you then I must be about my Father's business. There's a calling, a business, an agenda, a timing that God has for me that I must be. But I went back to the house and I obeyed you. I submitted to my father and mother, but now he's about 30 years of age. He's left home. He's gone into the wilderness, was tempted by Satan, baptized by John. All these things his ministry is starting. He started choosing his team, and now he says, woman, I'm no longer under your authority. I'm now under the authority of my Heavenly Father, and there's a timing. My hour has not yet come. You're pushing me to start something that once I started, the clock starts. The countdown to the crucifixion happens. Do you know what you're asking me to do? He doesn't say no, but he's challenging her to understand that he's Lord and she's not, and that as much as she was his mother, she needs him to be her Savior. So his response was not a no, but it was to grow her faith. He does the same thing with his dad. He doesn't say no to this dad, but he does warn him, not just the dad. He's actually warning the crowds, because what happened when Jesus comes back and this dad comes, everyone's gathering around to see what Jesus will do, and he's warning them. And I say them because the word you in the Greek language is plural. Let me show you how the NIV translates it. John 4, verse 48, New International Version. Unless you people see signs and wonders, Jesus told them, you, if you're from the South, y'all will never believe. He's talking about people who they're chasing the signs, they're chasing the miracles, and no matter how many miracles they see, they want another one because it doesn't satisfy. Miracles alone won't do it if you don't see the sign of the miracle. Old Testament Israel experienced more miracles than you and I could imagine, yet they didn't believe and they struggled to believe. Miracles themselves are only signs. Jesus was warning them, and he's warning the dad, and he's warning us against what we might call contingent faith or contingent belief. What I mean is, I'll believe in you if you do this sign. I will have faith in you when you do this. And what's interesting is we keep moving the goalpost. Well, now, I don't know if that was right. Let's do another one. And they just become sign and wonder chasers and never meet the wonder maker. Let me give you an example. On the cross, the religious rulers were tormenting Jesus and taunting him. And they said, if you are the Son of God, if you are who you say you are, come down from the cross and then we'll believe in you. If you'll do this. Now first of all, please understand, we'll come to that when we get closer to Easter and Good Friday. But Jesus had the power to come off the cross, but he couldn't save himself and save us. He had to choose one or the other. He said, I could call 10,000 angels and they could free me. But if I save me, I'll never save you. So he could not come off the cross. But they didn't mean it. They had seen so many miracles. Jesus said if Sodom and Gomorrah had seen the miracles that people have seen this generation, they never would have been blown up because they would have believed. But you see all kinds of signs, and they speak of me, but you don't believe. So he's warning us about always saying, well, I got to see something else. And then I got to see something else. And I got to see something else. His dad begs and begs Jesus to please come to Capernaum and heal his dying son. And part of that was because he mistakenly believed the only way a miracle could happen in Capernaum was if Jesus was in Capernaum. Because everybody knows there's no long-distance miracles. Or are there? What's so interesting is while I'm working on this message, really, I've been working on it and praying on it, and I'm this week, and I had back and forth phone calls and texts, and I know earlier, Pastor Mike, we prayed. Manny and Elizabeth, Den, part of our family of faith, and Elizabeth had a brain bleed, and then they did surgery, and then it got worse, and it was bleeding again. They did another surgery, but because her vitals were not strong, they couldn't do another surgery. She was in too much of a life and death situation. And many of us were praying, and man, no one could go see her except just like one family member. Once they were with her, they could not leave, and so none of us, as far as pastors or friends, could go. But I was texting. I called and prayed with her before she went to surgery, and then I was texting with Manny what's going on. And then her vitals got better, and as we were praying, I was on this very story. And so as I prayed with Manny and as I was praying for her, I said, I can pray here and Jesus can heal there because there are long-distance miracles. I might not be in the room, but Jesus can be in the room. And so we prayed, and then yesterday, so we had texted back and forth, and so yesterday I just wanted to find out what was happening, so I texted Manny, what's the latest update? And then he texted back, call me. And I'm like, call me, you just don't know what that, so I called him, and he said, hey, and his voice was kind of up, he said, just a minute, and he put me on speakerphone, and then Elizabeth started talking. It was amazing to be able to talk with her, and she's better, and she's got a ways to come, but that was just... It was just exactly what I was studying. That sometimes Jesus can do there. He can do long-distance miracles in our lives. Long-distance miracles in the lives of people that we love. But at this point, this dad doesn't believe that. Jesus, you've got to come. You've got to be with me. And let me tell you what that says to me and see if you can identify with this. Have you ever asked God for a miracle and then told God how he needed to do it? Have you ever told God, God, I need this, and I need you to do it like this. Jesus, come with me to Capernaum. I need a miracle, and you got to come with me. I want to give you a line that I really hope you'll remember. I really do. I hope you'll stick this in your heart and mind because you're going to need this. God works everything together for our good, but rarely in our way. One more time. God promised to work everything together for good to those who love him, believe him, called according to his purpose, but he rarely works in our way. Do you believe that God's thoughts are higher than your thoughts and his ways are higher than your ways? Which means ask God, but don't tell him how to do it. Because what he will do is always beyond what you could think for, hope for, or imagine. You don't even know what to tell him, but he knows. Never stop asking God. Never stop asking God for what you need, but don't tell him what to do. Because he has ways of doing things that we would never imagine. He always gives us more than we would imagine. We'll see that in a moment. Jesus does not respond to contingent believing. I'll believe if you, I'll believe when you. He responds to determined believing. To people who keep asking and refuse to give up. The thing about this dad was he pleaded. He kept pleading. Jesus said, you'll only believe in me if you see me. And that's it. Yeah, I got that. But will you please? It doesn't stop him. Luke 18, verse 1, one day Jesus told his disciples a story to show that they should always pray and never what? Give up. Now, many times Jesus told stories or parables, word pictures, and then afterwards his disciples would come to him and say, what did that mean? Was that for us? Was that for everybody else? Because they didn't get it. So he starts this story off by saying, before I tell you a story, here's what it means. I'm going to tell you a story, and the story means keep praying, don't give up. And the story was of a widow who had no rights in society during this time, and that she was widowed, all kinds of things going on in her life, and then she goes to an unjust, uncaring judge and says, I need justice. But she doesn't quit. She keeps badgering this judge. Here's the story. Luke 18, verse 4. The judge never gave her the time of day. But after this went on and on, he said to himself, I care nothing what God thinks, even less what people think. But because this widow won't quit badgering me, I better do something. See, she gets justice. Otherwise, I'm going to end up beaten black and blue by her pounding. Now, whether it meant she was going to jump him or just ruin his reputation. Then the master, verse 6 says, do you hear what the judge, corrupt as he is saying? So what makes you think God won't step in for his chosen people who continue to cry out for help? Won't he stick up for them? I assure you he will. He will not drag his feet. Watch this question. But how much of that kind of, say it out loud, persistent faith, not just faith, determined faith, persistent faith, will the Son of Man find on earth when he returns? Jesus says there are parables of comparison and parables of contrast, and this is a parable of contrast. He's not saying God's like that judge. He's the opposite of that judge. He's told a couple of stories, and the seek, knock, ask is all in this part of the passage of Luke. But he's telling a story that God is not like this judge. He's the opposite of that. He hears, he cares, he will do something about it. And you say, well, it's not as quick on my, well, God's schedule is not always our schedule. His ways are not all our ways. But while we are waiting, God is working. While we are asking, God is working. Jesus says, my Father's always at work. God never takes a break. He's always working. He's always working on our behalf. The question is, will we refuse to give up on God? And Jesus says, when I finally come back, will there still be people that refuse to give up on me? They refuse to bail on me. One of my favorite verses, it comes out of Isaiah 50, verse 7, and the writer says, I refuse to give up because I know God will never let me down. I got a question for you. That crisis, that impossibility, that hurt, that wound, are you willing to keep on asking until something happens? The old acronym PUSH, pray until something happens. Are you willing to keep praying until something happens? Are you willing to pray more than once? Some of you may have been falsely taught by somebody. You pray one time and then you just thank God. No. Intercession is travailing in prayer. It's giving birth in prayer. Birth pains aren't a one-moment deal. They've been hours and hours and days, not just for giving birth, but birthing what God has for us. I tell you honestly, I have some requests. I kind of journal my prayer requests. I have prayer requests now that I've been praying for years and years and years, and they haven't happened. And honestly, I pray this exact story. I've walked in this auditorium and prayed this exact story. God, you are not a reluctant judge. You've heard me every time I've asked, and I'm not going to stop asking. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to persist until what I'm asking for happens, and not in my way, but in your way. But God, this needs to happen. And have you ever got the idea you pray once and you just stop? No. If you've come forward for healing, you come on Wednesday night for healing, and you got prayed for, and you go, I'm not healed, come the next Wednesday. And come the next Wednesday, come the next Wednesday. That's a lack of faith. No, it's a determined, persistent faith. Jesus does not honor presumptuous faith or conditional faith, but he honors determined faith. How serious are you? How desperate are you? How willing to persist are you? Let me give you stage 3. Stage 1, desperation. Stage 2 of believing, determination. Stage 3 of believing is doing. This dad says to Jesus, here's what I need you to do. And Jesus doesn't say no, but he kind of flips it. And he says to him, here's what I want you to do. Come on, have you ever said, God, here's what you got to do? And then God says, well, here's what you got to do. And he says, go home. Your son lives. That was great news. Or was it? Now, come on, be in the story for a moment. Your kid's dying. You've gone to Jesus. He's listening to you. You've talked to him. You've told him what's happening. And you tell him you got to come. And he says, you go home, your son lives. Now you got a choice. Do I go home and believe what he said? Or do I keep begging him and denying what he said? Well, then why do I keep asking him? I mean, there comes a moment you got to fish or cut baits. Either I got to get out of the boat and walk on water, or I got to stay in the boat. There comes a moment that I got to, faith without action, James says, is dead. I got to do something about what Jesus says. To the man's credit. John 4, verse 50 again, the man believed what Jesus said. Don't miss that, what he said, and started home. We've all heard the saying that seeing is believing. No, the Bible says sometimes believing isn't seeing, it's hearing. And then doing what we hear. Faith comes by hearing and then doing what we hear. There's so many principles that are true spiritually, practically. Let me just kind of help you with this. This whole concept of hear and then do what you hear is how you do faith. I ran across this story. It's a true story. This couple, here's the gist. The wife got home tired after a long day at the office. She kicked off her shoes, placed her glasses on the kitchen counter. She forgot to feed the cat before she left for work, so she grabbed the bag of cat food, stepped out the patio door, and filled up the cat's bowl. It was such a beautiful sunset, she decided to lay back on the reclining lawn chair and just soak up a few rays of the setting sun. As she closed her eyes and relaxed, she heard the family cat run up and start eating some of its food, and then, as cats are known to do, it began rubbing affectionately against her leg, and without opening her eyes, she reached down and just gently petted the cat. Her husband got home from work, looked out the window at his wife, relaxing in the backyard. Then he slowly slid open the patio door. Honey, he said softly, almost in a whisper, whatever you do, don't make any sudden moves. Don't turn around, just listen. And answer this question. Do you trust me? Of course I do, she whispered back. Then here's what I want you to do. No questions. I want you to get up very slowly, and then slowly, without any sudden moves, walk into the house. She didn't have a clue what he was talking about. It was a game, what he was doing. But she trusted him. She did exactly what he said. As soon as she got into the house, her husband closed the sliding glass door, handed her glasses, and said, please take a look out the window at what you were petting. It wasn't their family's cat. It was a skunk. If she had not trusted what he said, believed in what he said and did it, it would have been a very stinky situation. See, faith isn't always seeing before you believe. It's hearing and then acting on what you hear. You believe to see. You don't see to believe. And so this dad does exactly what Jesus says, and he starts for home. And while he starts for home, servants come and meet him and say, your son lives, he's well. Here's my question for you, very, very simply, very directly. Of what God has said to do, how much are you doing? There's some of us who are in trouble financially or relationally or physically or whatever it is, and God's word has things, it tells us what to do. Jesus constantly said, do this, do this, do this. The wise man, the foolish man, they both had houses, same neighborhood, same weather system, same storm, but one house stood and one house didn't because one man did what the word said and the other man did not. What are you doing with what God has told you? I'm just going to tell you for me, I'm not going to pick on you, I'll pick on me. My biggest problem is not my knowledge, it's my obedience. My biggest problem is it's not that I need to know more, I need to do more of what I know, because that's how you learn more. I do what I know. How much of what you know are you doing? How many times do you want to cop out on doing? Because the third stage of miraculous faith, life-giving faith, is the doing stage. That I do what he has said. I don't get it yet. I don't understand it yet. This man didn't see anything. Come on, you got to stay with me for just a second. Be that dad for a moment. What happens if I walk 17 miles and my son is dead? Or what happens if he's not better? Now I got to come back and find Jesus again. How's that going to work? There's all kinds of reasons not to take the trip home, but he does what Jesus says. And that leads us to the fourth stage of his believing and ours. And here it is. Stage 4 of believing is difference making. Difference making. The dad went from believing Jesus' words to believing in Jesus. In fact, let me just show you. Let me take you to John 4, verse 52. John 4, verse 52. And he asked them when the boy had begun to get better, and they replied, yesterday afternoon at 1 o'clock, his fever suddenly disappeared. Then the father realized that was the very time Jesus had told him, your son will live. Now I want you to watch this, very important. And he and his entire household believed what? Now say it again. He and his household believed what? Now watch this. Earlier, Jesus said, go home, your son lives. And it said he believed what Jesus said. He believed in what he said. Now he believes in Jesus. There's a difference. Yeah, I think God's word's God's word, but now I believe in the God of the word. The man's faith became a difference maker in his life, but not just him. See, Jesus answered this man's prayer, but so much more than he had asked. He asked for healing for his son, and Jesus miraculously did that. He healed his son, but he did more than heal his son. Healing his son was significant, but it was a temporary miracle. He saved his family, and that was an eternal miracle. Does Jesus care about your body? Absolutely, but your body's a tent that's wearing out. He cares about your forever life. This whole family, because when they got to, don't you think they talked? And the dad shared his whole experience of what he had and when he found Jesus and what Jesus was like and what he said to him and what he heard he had done and all the stories and what Jesus had commanded him. And he tells his family how he has put his trust. He believes in Jesus, and now his whole family follows him and they believe in Jesus. And now this immediate family becomes a forever family. Because God's biggest plan is not to show you a sign, it's to show you Jesus, so that you and I don't believe in miracles. We believe in the God of miracles. We believe in Jesus. And even if I don't see what I want to see when I want to see it, I believe in him. There's no going back on who he is and believing in him. So Jesus gives him a greater miracle of saving his entire family, which was eternal. His son was healed, but he eventually died. There's no 2,000-year-old Capernaimites or whatever they would call them. He died. But his family was eternal. His family was a forever family. I got a special word to mom and dads. This is not a parenting seminar, but I got a word for moms and dads because it comes out of this story. Here's my word to every mom and dad. If you're a mom or dad, raise your hand real fast. Everyone's got a mom or dad. You're a mom or dad. Here's my statement to you. Prioritize your family's faith. You prioritize your family's faith by having a personal faith, by having a faith story and telling it to your children. It's what Moses says. Let these things be on your heart and then impress them on your children. Have a faith and then share the faith. I read an interesting survey, a study that was done about children and coming to Jesus and families, and here's what was discovered. When a mom and dad follow Jesus, when a mom and dad have a personal faith in Jesus, 72% of their children do as well. Some of you were here for the celebration service, 25 years, and we played a little video when I was 4. And I said, I'm going to be a preacher. I'm going to be a pastor. Why did I do that? Because my parents, I started going to church 9 months before I was born. I went my whole life. I never asked not to go because I knew what the answer was. My parents are school teachers, so I had to do my homework and I had to go to church. I had a rough life. No, I had great opportunities, and I had great role models, I had great examples. I pastor now long enough, and I've dealt with enough families, and I'll hear, not here, but other places, I hear families, and I'll hear parents say, man, my kid won't go to church. And I wonder, is that because you went to 50 churches when they were growing up? Or you never went to church? And then we wonder why our kids don't have a faith, because they didn't see it. Because faith is contagious. Attitudes are contagious. No, you can't believe for your child, but you can lead them to a place where they experience. The first songs I ever sang were Jesus songs. I learned how to spell Bible by singing it. I started with these songs that still, some of them are still in my head. I got a 99-year-old Sunday school teacher still alive, prays for me every Saturday. Because at a very early age, listen, some of you parents are very committed to your kids' education, and that's good. I'm glad you are. Whether you send them to school or school them at home, be very careful because it's pretty messed up. You're very committed to your kids' health. You take them to the doctor. You get them checkups. You do all these things. And all those things are valid. But let me tell you something. If you don't make sure they're right with God, you've missed the biggest part of their life. I can't make them go to church. You make them go to school. You make them go to the doctor. You make them go to the dentist. I hate that, but you make, why? Because it's for their good. Student ministry. Pastor Hayden, team, they're doing an amazing job. So well, I don't make my kid. I'm going to give you a word. You make your kid be in the right place and God does something in their life, you'll thank God your whole life that you were a parent who parented instead of just followed. My greatest prayer, and I mean this sincerely, thank God for my wife Jewel and Jordan and Jackie. But my highest priority in life is not, thank God for this church, but it's not having a big church. It's not making a lot of money. It's not that my kids will make a lot of money. I hope they make a lot of money and take care of me when I'm older. That's a secondary prayer. Let me tell you what my highest goal in my life is for my family to be a forever family in God's presence. If I save the world and I miss my family, heaven will be great, but not as it could be. There is nothing more important than you're making sure your children know Jesus. And you bring them, and you teach them, and you model for them. It is so, this man believed in, and his whole household believed in. The healing didn't last, but the believing in Jesus did. Don't give it to somebody else. 72% of children whose parents have a personal faith follow that faith. 6% of children who have a parent with no faith eventually find. Some of you are in that 6%, but the statistics of meeting and knowing Jesus goes so down when a parent doesn't love and follow Jesus. That's your highest calling as a mother and dad, is to have a forever family of faith. And so I just tell you this. All of us have impossible situations or overwhelming problems, and if you don't have one of those, I'm praying you get one. Because that's what positions us for miracles. When you can't do it, you can't achieve it, you can't accomplish it, you can't overcome it, you can't work through it. That's where your ability ends, God's ability begins. See, God is after you believing in him and then growing in that believing. This desperate dad shows us not only the struggles he had, but the stages of his believing. And stage one of believing again is desperation. How desperate are you? You and I will often never reach out to anyone else for help or God until we're desperate. The old saying is that until the pain of changing is greater than the pain that we're feeling, until the pain of change is greater than the pain, we don't change. Until that pain is something's got to happen in my life. So I ask you again, how desperate are you? The second thing this man teaches us, he was desperate. He goes 17 miles uphill to find Jesus, and then he was determined. Jesus says, don't just chase me for signs and wonders, because you can get those and miss me. And the man goes, yeah, I got that, but I need healing. Please, I beg you. He would not give up. Pray, but don't give up. Ask, don't tell God how to do it, but don't stop asking. Because God is not a reluctant God, but he honors persistence. In fact, he says, when I come back, will I find persistent faith? Will I find people that don't bail on me? God, you didn't do what I wanted when I wanted, so I'm out of here. Because I don't serve you because you're God. I serve you for what I get. Thank God for what I get, but God's more than his gifts. You got a choice between a giver or the gift. Take the giver. That's where all the gifts come from. The third stage of his believing was doing. Jesus, you got to do this. And Jesus said, no, you do this. You go home. Your boy lives. What has God told you to do? In his word, by his Spirit. What are you doing that God has told you to do? And then the last is his fourth stage of believing was difference making, because no longer did he believe in Jesus' words, he believed in Jesus. And it changed him, and it changed his whole household believed in Jesus. Believing is life-giving. Would you bow your heads and hearts with me? Father, in Jesus' name, please take this story. It's one, Lord, that sometimes we just kind of move through and read through quickly, but John says it's a sign, and so we stop to read the sign. I pray for those today who are desperate. They need a miracle of healing or of hope or of finances or in their marriage or somebody they love and they care deeply about is in desperate shape. Some of us, Lord, are doing well, but some of those we love are not. Please help us with this word to understand the power, potential of believing. Heads are bowed, eyes are closed just for a moment. Nobody's looking around. No one's leaving. Please, just for a moment. I'm going to ask you, the last moments of every service are the most important. And here's why I say that, because they're the decision-making moments. Everything leads to a decision. If you've never said yes to Jesus, or maybe you did, but you just kind of slipped away from God's best in your life and following after him, I want to pray for you today. If you're here today and you're watching online, I don't know where you are, what time, I just know there's sovereign divine appointments that God makes for us. And right where you sit or wherever you're watching, I want you to do something, because faith always involves action. If you say, I am desperate for a spiritual breakthrough in my life, I am desperate to know God, I'm desperate for God to step into my life and step into my situation, I want you to raise a hand all over this room just for a moment, right where you sit. Just raise your hand for a moment. I need God to step into the life of someone I love and care about, my child, my spouse, my parent. There's somebody I'm praying, God, just to break through in their life. Now I want to pray with you, Father, in Jesus' name. You know every hand, but you know the story. I pray, first of all, that we would know you as Savior and Lord, and right where you are, you can say, Jesus, forgive me of my sin. You suffered and died on the cross to pay for me, and I put my trust, I put my faith in what you did, not what I can do. And I receive you as the Savior, the leader of my life. And I pray for all those who are praying for others, that they would hold on with one hand to you and with one hand to them and refuse to give up. I pray for tenacious believers. I pray for believers with persistent faith that will not let go, because God will not let go of us. And I thank you for it, and I pray for miracles to happen, because that's who you are. In Jesus' name, amen.